I get asked this question all the time. Do you need an LLC to create apps on the App Store? The answer is yes and no. So Apple lets you create an Apple developer account without needing to have an LLC. However, there are some risks associated with this. Not having an LLC essentially means you are setting up an app business as what's called in the United States sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship means that you are operating a business as an individual. Like, I bought this pen for $1 and I'm going to sell it for $2. That $1 in profit is now going to be reported on my personal income tax as $1 in profit that I need to pay taxes on. Okay, so this is the concept of a sole proprietorship. This works well for people who are just doing small hobby-based businesses. Maybe they're buying and selling things, setting up shop at a flea market, and doing just really small amounts of business with very minimal legal risk associated. Okay, so Apple lets you create apps as a sole proprietorship. However, I highly recommend that if you have an app with some legal risk associated, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, that you form an LLC. An LLC in the United States of America stands for Limited Liability Company. Most other countries worldwide have a concept of a limited company. I've seen it as LTD. I've seen it as Limited Co. And this is a pretty generalized concept now as more countries in the world have adopted solid business standards. So if you form an LLC in the United States of America, it stands for Limited Liability Company. And the biggest benefit of them is the fact that it's limited liability. This goes back to my comment about having risk associated to your app. Whether you know it or not, software has risks associated. And the cold hard truth is that there are small software players, like potentially you, who have building your first, second, or third app in the thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands of dollars. And there are huge software players who have raised tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so when you are working in the world of software, there's definitely some risk associated. Let me tell you a story in just a moment. But what I mean by that is that when you are competing in the marketplace and you have a limited liability company, anytime a company sues you or you have some sort of like bankruptcy or financial disaster, your liabilities are limited to that business entity, the limited liability company. Let me give you an example. Say you're building a storytelling app and you have 100 stories on the app. You hire story writers to write stories for you. And this is all based on a true story. Say you have an app where you have a bunch of stories and you hire story writers. One of your story writers goes off to copy another story in another app. That story gets uploaded into your app. The big company that they copied it from finds out and sues you. And they say, hey company, you copied our story and we lost $500,000 in potential revenue because of it. We are suing you for $500,000. You, the developer, have, say, $500,000 in your bank account, in your personal bank account, and your business has $50,000 in the business bank account. Okay. If you are not using a limited liability company, that $500,000 in your personal account would have to be used to pay that settlement. But if you're using an LLC and there's only $50,000 in the LLC, that company can only come after the $50,000 that is in your LLC. So that's what it means to be limited liability. Your liability is limited to the assets of your company. Although your company would likely go bankrupt, at least they didn't come after your personal account. And this is the biggest advantage. And when you're working in the software space, this is where the risk can come in. And especially if you're doing storytelling, if you're doing content-based apps, if you're doing, video, apps where there might be some copyright risk. And although you're going to be a responsible entrepreneur and not copy people and just perform responsible business, it still comes with just like I can sleep well at night type of assurance. And I highly recommend it. There's also another big benefit, and that's just for personal taxes, right? You can control your profit and loss as a separate entity and not mix up two types of revenue. Because say you have a working job and you're getting paid on a W-2 salary. W-2 in my world, I refer to that as tax paid money. That's money that's coming into your account with taxes paid. Money that is generated as a business is not tax paid. You have pre-tax money. So if you generate $10,000 through your app and then that money is getting deposited into your personal bank account, you haven't paid taxes on that yet. And if you spend all that money at the end of the year, you're going to have to pay taxes on that money that you spent. And you might not even have the money to spend on taxes or pay your taxes. So what I like to do is have a separate bank account for my LLC where all my pre-tax money is getting pumped into. I then use that LLC's bank account to pay for any extra expenses related to my software business. Like if I buy a keyboard and a mouse, if I buy a new monitor, if I buy anything that relates to my software company, such as maybe I take an investor out on dinner, I have a developer who I need to pay, marketing expenses, ads, you name it. I do all that separately so that I can deduct those expenses from my income, because in business, you have a fundamental concept. You have revenue minus your cost of goods sold equals gross profit, right? And so taxes are paid on gross profit after the cost of goods sold or cost of rendering those services. Say I have a no-code agency and I sold I sold an app for $10,000. I paid a developer $5,000 to build it. I'm only going to be paying tax on the $5,000 gross profit, right? And so having a separate bank account allows me to keep track of those incomes and expenses, pay tax on the bottom line, and then at the end of the year, I can then draw the money that I need for my self, which is like the money that I'm going to be paying my rent, my bills, my mortgage, all that other stuff with. So that's the biggest benefit, is just like separation of liabilities and just overall cash flow management. The limited liability is also extremely helpful. And just generally having another entity that you can perform business under and potentially allocate ownership to. Say you want to bring on a partner. Now you have a really clean structure of saying, hey, you're going to own 10% or 20% of this LLC. And it's super straightforward. Another huge benefit that I like is how easy it is to file taxes in an LLC. It's typically just one additional paper on top of your normal tax returns. So in a corporate tax return, like Ambitious Labs, we're a C Corp, we have to have a really, really long tax return. We have to pay a lot of money to a CPA. But typically in an LLC, you can sometimes do it yourself, or your local tax advisor, H&R Block, or whoever you use to file taxes can easily do an LLC. I've been doing my tax returns myself as a personal plus an LLC for the last 10 years. And then now, since I'm running Ambitious Labs as a Delaware C Corp, we have a CPA that handles my taxes and the company taxes. So all this to say, if you do build an app on the store, I highly recommend using an LLC. You don't have to. Once you file for an LLC and get your EIN number, you will need a DUNS number. A DUNS number is a separate number that's issued by a company called Dun & Bradstreet. This is another number that Apple specifically wants you to have that identifies your LLC. So this is also just like a identification number for your LLC. Typically takes about a week or two to get that DUNS number back after you file for an LLC, and then you're good to create that App Store account. If you've already created an App Store account as a personal account, you can always transfer it to a LLC later. That does require some time. It doesn't really cause any downtime in your app. You won't lose anything because of it. And it's a good way to go. However, you will have to pay that $99 Apple developer fee again when you create a new account. So yeah, if you need any help filing for an LLC, Ambitious Labs has partnered up with a company called CorpNet. I'll leave a link in the description and in the lesson notes here for you to use our link to get access to a very family-friendly, founder-friendly business filing company called CorpNet. We know the family. They're highly reputable. They have amazing reviews right here on Trustpilot. And they've offered us a ton of free resources that we're passing along to you. We have office hours part of our community. And then we're really excited to be working with a family-owned business. I've worked with LegalZoom before. They absolutely suck. I've only had terrible experiences on LegalZoom. So we're excited to be helping you guys out, offering business formation services. There's a free course inside the learning platform. So head over there and take the free course on how to form an LLC. And we'd really appreciate if you guys used our affiliate link so that we can continue to provide free value to you. We are getting a small kickback, and that we really appreciate it. Awesome. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask in Discord. I'll see you in another lesson.